I'm Carrie Price. I'm a clinical informationist at the Welch Medical Library. Thank you for making time in your day to come to this webinar. I think you'll find Covidence to be a really super tool. I'm happy to share it with you. And I've put my email and our web address here on my first slide. You're always welcome to contact me to follow up. Today's plan is to give you a brief overview of systematic review methodology and typology, since that's the kind of review that Covidence was really created for. Then we'll talk about the key features of Covidence. I'll have some screenshots, but I'll do my best to do a live demo where I can. Then I'll send you on your way with some helpful resources to get you started in your next review with Covidence. And I'm going to do my best to monitor chat, but my caveat here is that I'm on my laptop with a single screen. So while I won't be monitoring it constantly, I will try to check in periodically. And Sharon and Mike, who are on this call, the other librarians, feel free to unmute yourselves if I'm missing an important question, or answer a question in the chat if you see one that you can answer. And as always, I think it's pretty informal, so feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like to pop in with a. So what is a systematic review? By raising your hand or putting a yes or no in the chat box, how many of you have been involved in a systematic review before? Yes, yes. See a couple yeses. Okay, so this is a familiar methodology to some of you. All right, so systematic reviews came about roughly in the 1970s and 1980s after Dr. Archie Cochran wrote Effectiveness and Efficiency, Random Reflections on Health Services in 1972. He called on the medical community to organize critical summaries based on the evidence provided by randomized controlled trials. So the first reviews were reviews of clinical effectiveness, really looking at the evidence from randomized controlled trials. And then we had Dr. Professor David Sackett, sometimes called the father of evidence-based medicine, who tasked clinicians with making conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of current best evidence in decision-making for patients, for clinical expertise, and to use the best external clinical evidence from systematic research. If you are interested in undertaking a systematic review, here are some resources I'd like to point out. It's important that before you get started, you have an idea of what's involved, because a systematic review can be a very onerous and lengthy process. You'll definitely need a team, a formulated research question, a protocol, and an idea of what it is that you're looking for. And I should also note that the average time to complete a systematic review is 67.3 weeks, so over a year. And that's according to an article by Bora et al., which I think is in the references of this slideshow. And if it's not, I'll make sure I'll share it later. I like to visualize the workflow of the systematic review process with the Prisma flow diagram. This probably looks familiar to some of you. So starting at the top, you'll see that the research team identifies records through database searching, and this is comprehensive and systematic searching. So we're not looking at like 5 or 10 articles here. We're looking at hundreds or thousands probably. And with the help of a librarian, of course, you need to do the database searching with the help of a librarian. And you'll identify additional records through other sources. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the top box on the left is records identified through database searching, and the top box on the right is additional records identified through other sources. So you might be aware of unpublished literature, or you might have found something on Google that you're not finding in a bibliographic literature database. And then you'll move through the part of removing duplicates and screening. And that's where Covidence comes in. Covidence is an excellent screening tool that's going to save you tons of time. Here are a few different types of systematic reviews. This is according to the Munn article that's linked at the bottom of this slide. So systematic reviews have generally been clinical in nature, but you'll see here, you might see a framework that fits your topic a little better than a review of effectiveness. So qualitative, for example, or I think there's one for, what's it called? psychometrics and surveys and more qualitative data. So there are different types of systematic reviews, and you might find that you're interested in one of these. And I encourage you to read this article. It's a really super article to help you develop your question and proceed through the systematic review process. And even though I'm not an expert in this area, I've put together some resources for translating the systematic review methodology into the education discipline. This is not my area of expertise. I'm strictly a clinical librarian, so you need to check out these resources and decide for yourself if a systematic review approach is right for you. That's a really quick overview of systematic reviews and really the motivation for a tool like Covidence, which is now being used more and more by other teams doing other types of research, and Cochrane, which is a systematic review. Cochrane is an evidence-based medicine research collaboration publishing systematic reviews that are very rigorous. And so now let's talk about Covidence. And let me check the chat box to see if anyone has had any questions. Scoping review. Scoping review, yes. I think in my references at the end of this slideshow, there's an article that's called When to Do a Systematic Review, When to Do a Scoping Review. It's by Munn et al., and I'll make sure you get a copy of that. It does talk about how scoping reviews can be used to inform policy, map the current evidence, find out where there are research gaps, and inform future practice. And Juliana says, happy to see these resources about systematic reviews that might be helpful outside of the health and medical environment. Thanks. You're welcome. I think it's really a growing and expanding topic and methodology. So let's move on to Covidence, really the reason why we're all here. Covidence is a web-based platform, means that you can access it from anywhere and you don't have to download it to your computer. And it's a systematic review production tool created by a nonprofit team out of Australia. And as of 2015, Covidence is the standard production platform for all Cochrane systematic reviews. I want to note that Covidence is not a citation management program. You can't write your papers with it. You can't do in-text citations and bibliographies. So you'll still need to use a citation management program. And you can check out a few of the different kinds on our Welch Medical Library Citation Management Guide to help you make an informed decision. It's really a matter of preference. Let me open this link for you. I think I'm sharing this screen. Can everyone see a guide? So the tool that Hopkins supports is called RefWorks, Legacy RefWorks, and ProQuest RefWorks, which is the newer version. You can also purchase EndNote, and then Mendeley and Zotero are free up to a very generous limit, and these are citation management programs. So after you get past the point of screening and doing your textual synthesis or your evidence synthesis, you may need to move back to one of these so that you can write your paper and insert your references and create bibliographies. All right, let's go back to the slides. Key features of Covidence. It has a lot of really super features and people just rave about. So it's really the first step here that people rave about, and that's the title and abstract screening. The others are optional. So Covidence is going to allow you to move through that first step of title and abstract screening with ease. And that's really what I want to show you today. And I know that some people on this call used it for title and abstract screening. So feel free to unmute yourselves, chime in if you'd like about how that process worked for you. And I'll pause here for just a moment if you'd like to do that.
Hi, this is Julianne. I'll just say that, yes, I'm one of the ravers. We used it for a project and it allowed us to go from start to finish in a modest literature review in less than a month. And there's no way we would have been able to do that without tearing our hair out, without using the Covidence. And we really thank Carrie for introducing us to it.
I'm really glad. Great. That is super to hear. I haven't heard anything bad about it, but that doesn't mean that There aren't other tools out there that do similar things, but Covidence is a really super tool. So the first thing you'll need to do is create an account with Covidence following these instructions, and I will make sure that these are sent to you. And in fact, let me do that right now. So if I go to our Welch, and you'll have different entryways, you'll have the Eisenhower Library, but the way that I go in is through the Welch Medical Library. Under Research Tools, if I click on Covidence, here are the instructions and the links for signing up. So the first thing you need to do is create your own account. And once you've created that account, then you request an invitation to the JHU Welch Medical Library, which gives you access to our subscription. So as yourself, you get exactly one systematic review. And under the JHU Welch Medical Library umbrella, you have unlimited reviews. So I'm putting this link into the chat box right now, and you'll be able to follow these instructions to set up your Covidence account. And then let's proceed through. I am strongly encouraging you to work with your librarian, and that's because you'll see later that Covidence only accepts certain file types. They accept PubMed XML, EndNote XML, and something called RIS format. So if you can work with a librarian to get your search results aggregated into one file type, which is typically RIS format, you'll have a lot better luck importing it into Covidence without any problems. I saw a chat question come up. The invite process is very quick, and it's also listed on the Sheridan Library's website under databases. Thanks for that clarification. So once you've signed up, you've gotten your invitation, and you're ready to start your review. This is what you'll see. This is your home page, your home dashboard. This is my screenshot, so you'll see that I have two reviews here called ventilator-associated events and laryngeal injury post-extubation. So you can ignore those, they'll only show up in mine. When you're ready, you click Start a New Review. And then you make sure that you're doing it under the JHU Welch Medical Library and not under yourself, because you only get one review. So make sure you click the radio button for JHU Welch Medical Library and then click Create Review. Now, before you upload any records to your review, you need to set up your review in Settings. So you click on Settings up here at the top where the screenshot cursor is, and it's circled with dark blue. And you'll be able to give your review a name. And all of these are optional. I don't think any of these are required. You'll be able to input the date of the last search, document your search strategy, which, to be honest with you, I usually document it another way. I don't usually document it in Covidence. You'll be able to review citations if you're updating a previous review, and set the number of reviewers required to screen to 1 or 2. So in a true systematic review, you would need two reviewers to avoid bias. But if you are planning on working on this alone and it's not a true systematic review, you can set it to 1. Same with full text screen. You can set it to 1 or 2 reviewers, and then you can add and remove reviewers, and they don't have to be from Hopkins. They can be from any institution. So that is kind of super. I just learned that recently. When you do sign up, you'll need to sign up with your JHMI or jhu.edu email, but you can invite different people to your review who aren't from Hopkins, so you can really collaborate with this tool. You'll be able to modify your team settings, which is user privileges, who can do what, who can delete, who can add. And then you'll have to add your inclusion and exclusion criteria. So when you are setting up to do a literature review, of course, not all the literature that you pull will be perfectly relevant. You'll have to decide, are we looking at articles in English? Are we looking at randomized controlled trials? Are we looking at observational trials? Do we need an article that mentions a specific instrument or measure? And so you can put those inclusion and exclusion criteria into Covidence. And you'll also be able to set up something called highlights, which is where you can set up certain words to be highlighted so that it makes it easier for you to screen. And you can also, last but not least, add study tags. So if you are working with mixed methods, or you just want to be able to tag certain references or records with different categories, you can set that up before you get started. So here I'm going to exit the slideshow and take a look at Covidence in real time. So I have already logged in, I think, yes. And I'm going to start a new review today. I have some references I've set aside for us. So I'm just going to do a test review. And the first thing it asks you is, are you creating a Cochrane review? Well, unless you've been invited by the Cochrane collaboration, you are not doing a Cochrane review. So for most people, the answer is going to be no. And then you get to name your review. Just so I remember later what I've done, I'm going to call it the Education Webinar Test. You'll see that I have 0 reviews left, but unlimited reviews under the JHU Welch Medical Library. I will click that and then create review. So let's see, I can hear, it's already popped me automatically into settings. If it hadn't done that, or if I needed to come back to settings, let's go back. Let's go. So here's my Covidence dashboard. And where did my review just go? Here it is. So they're listed from earliest to latest. So my most recent review is at the bottom. I'm going to go back into Education Webinar Tests. You see the steps that I'll need to take. But before I get started, here are the settings. So I'm going to click on the settings wheel. And here are the things we just talked about. So you can set up the date of last search. It was today. And you see it's a European format. You can put your search strategy here if you'd like. I'm often searching multiple databases, so this doesn't really work too well for me. I prefer to keep a separate document. If you're updating a current or existing review, you can put the citation here. And then you can set your reviewers required for screening. Today, it's just me, so I'm going to set that to 1. And reviewers required for full text review, I will again set that to 1 and save. So that part is set, and if you look up here at settings, there's review settings, and the next step is to add and remove reviewers. So I'm going to go in here myself. I'm already there, and I will invite another reviewer, and I will do Sharon.
Yes, that's right, at jhu.edu.
Okay, I was gonna look it up. Okay, so I can invite Sharon to this review. It's a pending invite. I can see when she's accepted it, and now I'm working with 2 people here. I can add additional people if I'd like. So if you do have 2 reviewers, it doesn't have to be the same 2 reviewers that look at every article or record. It can be just a minimum of 2 reviewers. So you could potentially have 3 or 4 people working and 2 people reviewing each article. So I could continue to invite, but I'm going to move back up to my team settings and take a look at what's next. So here, this is kind of tricky. I can see who's done what. So right now, Sharon hasn't yet accepted her invite. So her listing is not here. But when she is, I'll be able to see what she's done and what's left to be done. So you won't, let me just see if I can show you in another review that I have going. Let me go back. I think you can, yeah. So I'm going to click on my ventilator associated events. I'm going to go to my settings. I'm going to go to my team settings. And here we go. I can see that, and this was a review that was never completed. I have done 9, Dan has done 8, and Vincia has done 0. And this is where you can also set the rules where everyone can do everything, or you can manage the rules so that certain people have to screen, and only certain people can resolve conflicts. So if you do have 2 reviewers and there's a conflict, and I'll show you how that happens later, you'll have one person who needs to settle the conflict. So you can pick that person. Usually it's your team lead. I'm going to try to go back out to my review here. I think, yep, just click on the icon up at the top left. And I'm going to go back up to settings. So team settings. So right now I'm going to leave it on everyone can do everything. If I were planning on moving through the full text screening in Covidence, I can do the same thing and the same thing for data extraction. Looks like Sharon's accepted the invite, so she's there. So you can see how it's going. You won't be able to see how people voted, but you'll be able to see how the progress has gone because it's blinded. Next, we'll move to criteria and exclusion reasons. Now, today I've pulled some examples that are really sort of just a sham. I don't have a specific topic in mind, but if we did, let's say, has to be an observational, has to be 1990, English. And I don't actually encourage you to make a language bias. I'm just showing you, or a language limit, because it can introduce bias. But if you really don't have the capability of having an article translated, you might make that as a criteria. Needs to be talking about adult education. And then on the other side, you might say not K through 12, not pre-1990. So there's lots of ways you can do inclusion and exclusion criteria. It might have to do with geographic location, population. It might do with language, time frame, a measurement tool, an instrument, or a survey. So you can set all that up here. And when you're ready, click Save. And then I mentioned highlights. Well, yeah, let's go to highlights. So if you wanted to see words highlighted, you can type them here. Interprofessional, I want to see it highlighted for inclusion. I think it will be highlighted in green. And for children, I want to see, let's say, children. I set up some highlights here. So if a record has interprofessional, it'll show up highlighted in green. If it has children or grade school, let's say your K through 12, it'll show up in red. It's going to make it easier for your eyes. And if you're planning on doing full text review in Covidence, I'll tell you the reasons why you might not later. It just gets a little complicated. But if you are planning on doing full text review in Covidence, you can set up exclusion reasons here. So if you do get to read the full text of an article and you say, okay, well, this is excluded, you'll need to note for which reason. So it's the wrong population or the wrong outcomes, the wrong intervention, the wrong comparator, and you can add your own. So let's see, I just want to make sure those are saved. Yep, everything is saved, it's super. And last but not least, we'll look at study tags. I haven't really used this too much before. You might just want to categorize some of your records. I'm just going to add a tag for interprofessional. All right, so we worked through every piece of settings here. And now I'm going to go back with the back button up at the top left corner. And now we're on the dashboard for this review. And we know it because it says up here on the upper left, education webinar test, review summary, import, title abstract screening, text, full text screening, and data extraction. Let me get caught up on my notes. Let me check the chat before we move on. No questions in chat? All right, let me go back to the slides. Now we're ready to import references into the review. In order to have a working review, we need to have references. I guess they call them records. I'm always getting tongue-tied on everything, so we'll call them records. So what kinds of files can be imported? As I mentioned earlier, you can use EndNote XML, so that's a file that would come from the EndNote reference manager. PubMed XML, which is a format that can be exported from the database PubMed. Or if you're using an EBSCO database like ERIC or CINAHL or ABI Inform or some others, the names are escaping me right now, you can actually export straight to RIS text format. And if you're working with a librarian, we'll be able to export them to RIS text format for you and remove duplicates. So keep that in mind. You can import up to 50 megabytes and up to 15,000 references. So I don't think anyone is going to be limited by that. I think it's a pretty generous amount. Note that larger files take longer to upload, and Covidence will automatically deduplicate and keep track of duplicates for you. So the deduplication process is always sort of a human error kind of thing. So I always look for duplicates when I give files to my users, but there are inevitably going to be duplicates remaining, and Covidence will try to identify those for you and eliminate them for you. So then when you log into your dashboard for the review, you'll be able to move through your screening process. So here we have title and abstract screening. I can continue. This is just a screenshot. And actually, let's do this now in person, because I did set aside some references for today. I'm going to go back to the education webinar test review that I set up, and I'm going to say import. It's up here in the upper right hand corner, and it's the first step. I'm going to import it into, and you need to know what your next step is. So our next step for any review is going to be screening. So we'll say screening, and I will browse to the file that I set aside earlier. I'm not going to go into database searching today. This delivery 2 is an RIS format file that I got from the database ERIC on EBSCO host. So I am importing it into screening, and I chose the file, and now I'm going to import. So we're going to see what we get here. It's only 14. So like I said, this is not realistic. You're probably going to have hundreds, depending on your topic. It didn't find any duplicates. That's good. And so you'll see now that the first step, or the second step really, title and abstract screening has been populated with 14 studies to screen. 0 are done, 0 have 1 vote, 0 have conflicts, and 14 are left remaining. If I needed to check my team settings, I can do that here, or I can continue through the screening process. So when we are screening, we're going to get whatever data the database could give us. So it's usually the citation information, maybe some metadata, and the abstract. We're not looking at full text.
Carrie, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So you did an EBSCO search using some parameters.
Yes.
And you came up with 14 articles.
Yes.
Then within EBSCO host, you must have set up that file somehow.
Yeah, let me do that. I'll show you.
Yeah, I don't understand any of that, so.
Okay. So I'm on the Welch Medical Library homepage. Please note, you also have Eisenhower, which I think is new and improved and looks really great. And I'm just going to go to ERIC. I tried to make a pretty small parameter search. Let's see what I can come up with today. So here is ERIC hosted on the EBSCO host platform, and I'm going to type interprofessional education. And it populates, actually, it's smart. So there are some suggestions here. I usually like to go with their suggestions. And let's try to make it narrower. So anytime we're talking about interprofessional education in neurology, or neurological or neuroscience. So we're just casting a net for some articles. 218. The way I did it this morning was just to narrow it down by date. So let's say in the last couple years. So your filters in most databases are always going to be over there on the left. Whoops. And I'm just going to limit it then to academic journals. So I don't want dissertations, I don't want reports. So I have 25 articles, that seems pretty reasonable. I could look through them here, but we really wanted to pull them into Covidence. We'll say share, results 1 through 25. And they appear in my folder on the the right-hand side. So I can continue to search or browse, or I can go right to folder view. So if I'm in folder view, I can see I have 1 through 25 of 25 records, and I can now export them. And I think it's the first option. The first option is direct export in RIS format. And it'll note some citation managers here. So we see EndNote, Reference Manager, Zotero. There's some other formats here, RefWorks if you're using that one. But we're going to stick with RIS format, which is a universal file type for citations. And then I will click save over here on the left. I'll save the file. And then if I look in my downloads, here's the one I did earlier today. Here's the one I just did. It's called Delivery 2 and Delivery 3, but that's what EBSCO calls their export files. And you'll see the type is RIS formatted file. If you're working with ERIC or a database hosted by EBSCO, you'll be able to export that way. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. Let me find my Covidence. Where did it go? Here we are. So I'm not going to import those, but I could if I wanted to. So we'll just stick with these 14 that I had found earlier today, and let's move through the screening process. It assigns a number and shows you the first author, it has the title, the other authors, some citation information, and then the abstract. You can add a note here. Let's view history. It just shows me that I imported it today. And I'm the only reviewer on this project, so I can just say yes. So it fits my criteria, it works for me, I want to include it in my final review, so I can say yes. And so I'm just going to do that. I want to see if we have any highlights showing up. I thought my search was about interprofessional education, but I'm not seeing any highlights. Well, if they were there, we'd see them. So I guess I didn't pick any highlighted terms that are going to show up for us today, but you would see them there if you had done it right. And since I only have 14, I'm just going to continue to move through this process. Ideally, of course, you're reading these, you're looking at the title, you're looking at the abstract, and you're deciding if it meets your inclusion and exclusion criteria. So I'm going to vote yes on most of them. I'll vote no on a couple. Don't do what I'm doing. Now, if there were another reviewer, if I was requiring that Sharon also vote, they would need her vote too. This is a really nice interface, I should note, because prior to this, I think a lot of people were using Excel, and Excel is nice, but it's not going to do this for you. So I have just screened 14 references in my title and abstract screening. And so now you'll see the title and abstract screening, I guess three I voted no on, and there are 0 left to screen, and now there are 11 for full text screening. So let's go back to my slides. Screening, yes, no, or maybe. That's what it looks like. If there are conflicts and you have a third reviewer to break the conflicts, this is what they'll see. So you'll go into your review, you'll go into the section that says conflicts, and they will be able to make a final decision of whether this article should be included or excluded. And then you move to the full text screening. And this is where I'm going to say that this is not Covidence's strength. This is probably where you're going to want to export your references or records and do it in a way that's familiar to you. And the reason is because Covidence does not automatically import PDFs. So you'd have to import them yourself. There is a way to bulk import PDFs. You can find it on the knowledge base, the Covidence knowledge base. If you're dealing with a lot of records, like in this screenshot, 482, 58 studies to screen, there is a way to bulk import those PDFs. But I think for a lot of you, you'll be pulling your references out at this point to continue in a way that you're familiar with. Let's look at the chat. We have a couple questions. When you click yes, you include it in the final review. Isn't this just an, I'm sorry, I misspoke. When you click yes, you include it in the full text screening. So once you click yes in title abstract screening, it moves over to full text screening, the second piece of the process. Thank you for catching that. Covidence for most people has been a title and abstract screening tool, yes. And I think Juliana, who commented earlier, I think that's what she used it for. I'm not sure that a lot of people are doing data extraction and full text screening in Covidence. But let's talk about it. If you did want to do it, this is the next step. So after you've done full text screening and you've decided to include for reasons or exclude for reasons, you'll be doing quality assessment and data extraction. And Covidence has templates for these. Let me look at my notes. So Covidence uses the Cochrane risk of bias for quality assessment. And the data extraction template is something that you can set up yourself, but it's very important that you pilot it first before you get started actually doing the data extraction, or you might have to start from scratch. And this is not a point at which I'm involved very often, so I really just want to show you what it looks like. But if you wanted to find out more, you'll need to go to Covidence's knowledge base, which I have provided here. So they have a really nice, I think about 8-minute long video on doing quality assessment once you've done the full text review and done inclusion and exclusion. It's going to ask you for things like selection bias, attrition bias, and determine if the article that you've included has a good methodology. And then data extraction. So this is where if you're doing a meta-analysis or any sort of data synthesis, you might be looking at I think it's called a forest plot, or a table that's going to help you make sense of your results. So this is also a video embedded in these slides, and the slides were shared with you in the calendar invite. So feel free to click on these, watch them. I think they're both about 8 minutes long. So more resources for data extraction, Covidence's knowledge base, and note that the quality assessment and data extraction form templates in Covidence are clinically focused and may not be the best for your research. It just depends on what you're doing. And so you may consider exporting your references at this point and employing a quality assessment that's more in line with your methodology. So let's look at how that will work. This is a screenshot. I'm gonna go back to the, I'm gonna check chat. I see there's a question. Yes, Juliana said she did not use the extraction, mainly because they were very rushed and it wasn't a full systematic review, so you could be more idiosyncratic. Thank you for sharing that. So let's say I've done my title and abstract screening, and instead of 14 references, let's say it was 400 references, right? So you can see that it would really make your process a lot easier. But now we want to pull these references out so that we can continue to work with them for our literature review. So up in the top right-hand corner, we're going to say export. And it's going to ask you at which stage would you like to export? The screening ones, which were the 14 references, or the full text review, which after I voted yes and no, was only 13 references. So we're going to say we want the full text review. And then you can export it to CSV, which would be an Excel file. You can export it to EndNote if you're using that, Mendeley, RefWorks, or Zotero, which are all reference management programs. So we talked about those earlier. So these are probably good options for you if that's what you're using. I'm going to put it, let's say CSV. And I'll export. And it might take a moment. And it worked. So now I can download it. I'm going to open it with Excel. And here are my 13 references. Like I said, you'll probably have hundreds. It has the title, the authors, the abstract, the year, the journal, volume, issue, pages. Does not have the DOI, seems like it should. And then if you do need to go back into Covidence, it's going to give you the reference number for Covidence. So in Covidence, this was number 10, and they're calling it Terry 2018. So it's just an identifier so you can find it in Covidence. And then if you are doing a true systematic review or any type of review where you want to include a Prisma flow diagram, it's going to help you with that as well. And whenever I show people this, they say, wow, that's amazing. Let's go back up. I'm going to go back with the back button so I get back to the dashboard page. So here's my review. We know we're in the education webinar test review. We did settings, we did screening, we did export. We can look at Prisma. So Prisma stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analyses. And you've probably seen it before. So it has 14 studies imported for screening. You'd fill in here, actually I think you export it. You're just going to export this and then you'll be able to use it in your own Prisma diagram, but it's going to tell you how the process worked. And if you Google Prisma flow diagram, first result, and here's a Word template, open with. So depending on which journal you're submitting to or what methodology you've chosen for your review, you may be filling this out. Let's just take a look at it. I think it's pretty interesting. If my Word program can open. We'll come back to it in a moment. Let's look at the PDF. So here's the Prisma flow diagram, just a little bit neater. So identification of records, screening of records, eligibility, so full text inclusion, exclusion, what's included, and then your synthesis if you're making a synthesis. This is a video on exporting citations. So if you need to refresh your memory about how that works, this is a short video on how to do it from Covidence. And then at the Welch Medical Library recently, we put together a short tutorial on signing up for Covidence. I'll just start it real quick. So this is a 6-minute video that will walk you through signing up for Covidence and refreshing your memory about how it works. And I want to leave time for questions. I'm going to leave you with some of these slides. Actually, it's in your slides. These are all links to the Covidence knowledge base, the Welch Library's systematic and expert reviews guide, and how to find your librarian, whether it's me, Sharon, Mike, or someone else. You can find them on the Welch Library homepage or the Sheridan Library's homepage. And with that, I think, let's see, there's references here that you might find interesting. And I'd like to open it up for questions if there are any left. There's one in the chat. Okay, someone had to leave. That's fine. You're allowed. Any questions about Covidence or how you might use it for your reviews?
Hey, Carrie, this is Juliana.
Hi.
Hey, so in addition to wanting to use this for our own purposes as faculty, we're considering supporting students to use it for assignments. I just wondered if you know if other schools have done that, sort of used it in this truncated way that you're describing here, less about the Excel sheet piece and more about before that. And then in addition, so just one other thing, I know you mentioned it, but can you remind us again where in your slides or where we should go to get more information about creating our own, a more idiosyncratic template for the cut and paste piece if we do want to use that, but aren't doing a full-blown systematic reviewer or otherwise?
Yeah. So the first question, supporting students. As far as I know, there is not a seat limit or a user limit on Covidence. It is a fairly new tool, so what other schools are doing, it's hard to say. As a clinical informationist working mostly with doctors, fellows, and I can say that even they are using it for the screening part, and then most of them are pulling it out and doing the full text reviews separately because they're using such a variety of tools that that Covidence doesn't quite offer yet. So they're doing it their own way by exporting it. I think it's probably a great tool for students. The other option being, of course, like an Excel spreadsheet or an annotated bibliography or something like that. Here's the Covidence knowledge base, and I'm just going to look for data extraction. So setting up extraction tables for outcomes, if you do decide to stay in Covidence after the full text review and you'd like to play with the data extraction, you can look at more information here, depending on what kind of data you're working with. But as I said, this is not a step that I've been involved in very often. It'll probably make more sense to you guys. Excuse me a second. Any other questions or concerns about Covidence or anything I didn't answer? We're at 1:54, so I'll hang around for a minute or two. I thank you for coming. This will be recorded and shared, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
Carrie, thank you so much for doing this for our fellows. We appreciate it.